In the midst of the 16th century, in France, there emerged a renowned physician with peculiar abilities. According to rumors, every night, he would confine himself within his study, spending hours gazing into a basin filled with water until images began to surface. What the enigmatic doctor witnessed were the deaths of great leaders, brutal natural disasters, and horrifying wars inflicting pain upon humanity. These visions were meticulously recorded by the peculiar physician, only to be revealed to the world 500 years later under the renowned name of Nostradamus. As the records suggest, Nostradamus hailed from a middle-class Jewish family in the early 16th century, a time when the Catholic Church held supreme power. Those of differing faiths were compelled to convert to Catholicism or face expulsion from French society, and the family of Nostradamus was no exception. However, the outward conversion was merely superficial, and historians believe that Jewish individuals living in France during this period continued to uphold their culture and religious practices in secrecy. This is evidenced by Hebrew inscriptions found in some of Nostradamus' later documents. If this holds true, it's highly plausible that he was taught the practices of Kabbalah, a mystical tradition of Judaism dating back to the time of Moses. According to Scripture, God appeared before the Israelites on Mount Sinai, imparting the 10 Commandments to Moses, which became the foundational principles of their faith. Simultaneously, God bestowed upon Moses the knowledge of Kabbalah, to be kept hidden and passed down only to the worthy. Many believe that if Nostradamus possessed the secrets of this mystical tradition, he may have learned to interpret celestial signs to foresee the future. Furthermore, astrology played a significant role in Nostradamus' education. In fact, some suggest that his maternal grandfather was the first to introduce him to the discipline, as the study of stars remained integral to Jewish teachings, believed to be the gateway to the secrets of heaven. The educational journey of Nostradamus encountered numerous obstacles. When the bubonic plague broke out, he had to leave Avignon University and embarked on a journey across France to study herbal medicine, working as an unofficial pharmacist. After a few years, Nostradamus attempted to return to academia, enrolling at Montpellier University with the aim of obtaining a formal medical degree. However, due to his continued practice of allegedly illegal alchemical techniques, he was suspended from the university. Some historians later speculated that his name change from Nostradamus to the Latinized Nostradamus, a tradition associated with achieving high social status in medieval France, signified his formal transition to a physician by the late 1520s. Subsequently, Nostradamus actively participated in combating the rampant plague in France and achieved considerable success. At the age of 28, according to the renowned scholar Jules Caesar Scaliger, he relocated to Agen, where he married a local woman. The newlyweds enjoyed 3 years of happiness and had 2 children together. However, tragedy struck when his wife and children fell ill with the same disease while he was in Italy treating plague victims. Despite his swift return home to care for them, all 3 succumbed to the illness. Left with nothing but grief in Agen, Nostradamus packed his belongings and left the town. He spent the next 10 years traveling across Europe, seeking new experiences. According to records, this period marked his rediscovery of his passion for astrology during lonely nights beneath the starry sky. Between 1534 and 1545, Nostradamus is said to have begun foreseeing the future, with his visions gradually becoming reality. After the death of his entire family in 1534, he resumed his youthful wandering lifestyle. During these journeys, in addition to expanding his medical knowledge, he increasingly paid attention to interpreting omens from the stars. Eventually, he grew weary of the nomadic life and returned to his homeland at the age of 44, remarrying a widow. Following several years of marriage, Nostradamus began constructing his dream observatory, dedicating the top floor of his new house to researching the stars. We may never know exactly what transpired within this observatory, but it seems to have truly aided Nostradamus in honing his predictive abilities. In the year 1550, Nostradamus published his first work of prophecy, a yearly almanac containing dates and significant information regarding predictions of natural disasters and tidal waves. Thanks to the proliferation of printing technology during the Renaissance period, as well as the accuracy of his almanac in weather forecasting, numerous copies of the book spread rapidly throughout France and much of Europe at an astonishing pace. Following the success of this almanac, Nostradamus announced plans for a magnum opus titled The Prophecies, aimed at recording predictions for centuries to come. This work subsequently garnered the attention of the Catholic Church, where there was often skepticism towards prophets due to their sometimes dire predictions for the future of the Church. Some historians suggest this prompted Nostradamus to avoid using simple language akin to his previous almanac, fearing it would make it difficult to obscure potentially contentious prophecies from the Church. After nearly 5 years sequestered in his workspace, Nostradamus transcribed all his prophecies into 4-line verses called quatrains, with every 100 quatrains constituting a century, according to him. These seemingly endless verses rendered the book a haunting epic, with its unique style making readers feel as though they were delving directly into the mind of a true prophet, securing Nostradamus's resounding success. His fame soared, ultimately catching the attention of the most significant figure in the country at the time, Queen Catherine of France. Legend has it that Queen Catherine invited Nostradamus to her palace to seek his predictions regarding the fate of members of the royal family. This was perhaps because the Queen had perused Nostradamus's works and felt anxious about prophecies she believed could spell disaster for her family. According to researchers, a quatrain verse had instilled such fear in Queen Catherine that it was rewritten as follows: "The young lion will overcome the older one on the field of combat in a single battle. He will pierce his eyes in a golden cage. 2 wounds made one. Then he dies a cruel death." Upon arriving in Paris, Nostradamus advised Queen Catherine to keep the king away from the battlefield and from participating in jousting tournaments. Catherine then attempted to dissuade her husband, King Henry, from following Nostradamus's advice, but in 1559, the king disregarded his wife's warnings and agreed to participate in a jousting match. His adversary was the Count Montgomery, who led the royal guard and was 6 years younger than the king himself. Both men entered the arena wielding shields adorned with lion motifs. Their clash shattered both their spears into countless shards, inflicting 2 grievous wounds upon the king. The first strike pierced the count's neck, while the second, more fatal blow, breached the golden-plated helm and struck King Henry's eye. His passing came 10 agonizing days later, bedridden with pain. Nostradamus's prophecy of the king's demise, down to the minutest detail, catapulted his renown. His fame transcended borders, extending well beyond France to encompass all of Europe. Even after his passing, his reputation burgeoned. Some even claimed it surpassed his living legacy. For centuries following his death, Nostradamus's prophecies persisted as undeniable truths. Among his renowned quatrains, one ominously foretold the Second World War. "Beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hister. Into a cage of iron will the great one be drawn, when the child of Germany observes nothing." Many interpreted this verse as referring to Hitler, the notorious leader of Nazi Germany, who orchestrated the war. The use of Hister instead of Hitler over time led to speculation of printing errors or mistranslations. Additionally, the prophecy accurately depicted the condemnation of Hitler's nationalist and supremacist ideologies. Nostradamus further alluded to a cage of iron, likely representing Hitler's fortified bunkers in the waning days of the war. His ultimate defeat forced him into hiding within these structures, culminating in his self-inflicted demise. Germans, witnessing the devastation wrought upon their homeland during Hitler's final days in the bunker, saw their efforts to build a prosperous nation crumble to ashes, echoing Nostradamus's somber verses. These prophetic words resonated eerily into the new millennium, notably with the horrific events of September 11th. In the aftermath of the Twin Towers collapse, individuals flocked to the internet in search of answers. Surprisingly, Nostradamus became one of the most searched figures, surpassing even presidents and terrorists. In the ensuing weeks, Nostradamus's works surged to the top of Amazon's bestseller lists, as enthusiasts and experts scoured his prophecies for hints of the tragedy. Finally, everyone felt a chill as the thunderous words about their present existence were found within a book written centuries ago. These words read, "The earth trembles and spews fire from its core, shaking the towers of the new city to its core. The battle between two great stones shall endure, and Arethusa will thereafter dye the river red." Once again, these verses could allude to the 9/11 attacks, with the first two lines hinting at the imagery of the Twin Towers collapsing after the plane crashes. The phrase New City has been dissected and analyzed over the years, with many interpretations directly pointing to New York City, the site of the terrorist attacks, as New York also translates to New York City. The accuracy of the prophecy becomes strikingly clear through the phrases used by Nostradamus in his verses. Furthermore, many believe that the two great stones could symbolize the two religions: Christianity, represented by the United States, and Islam, represented by Afghanistan, engaged in a prolonged war post 9/11. Regarding the final verse about Arethusa, it could possibly refer to the name of an orchid found in the northeastern United States or the very location of the terrorist attacks. The eerie coincidence of a flower's name appearing exactly where the event took place astonished many, showcasing Nostradamus's predictive abilities. If the Arethusa flower symbolizes the United States, then indeed, the river dyed red signifies the lives of over 200,000 Afghans lost since the commencement of the war. In 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic emerged, wreaking havoc on our lives, prompting many to revisit Nostradamus's writings. They scoured through these strange verses, searching for any clues about the latest woes afflicting the world. And, of course, the prophet did not disappoint. In the roster of misfortunes, horror swept through America and Lombardy, fire aboard ships, disease and confinement, Mercury in Sagittarius, Saturn warns. Once again, each verse could be linked to specifics of the pandemic. The first verse, Nostradamus's list, likely refers to the millions of names of those afflicted and perished during the pandemic. The next line fittingly corresponds to the reality that America, particularly the United States and Lombardy, Italy, became epicenters of the outbreak. The third line, addressing disease and confinement, needs no explanation. As for the detail about fire aboard ships, it perhaps alludes to the cruise ship crisis that occurred at the onset of the pandemic. The final line initially sounds rather ominous, but it becomes much more understandable when we apply it to astrology. According to scientists, the moment Neptune entered the constellation Sagittarius was precisely in December 2019, coinciding with the discovery of the first COVID-19 victim. Similarly, when Earth entered the constellation Aquarius on March 21, 2020, it was the same day New York City went into lockdown. If these analyses hold true, Nostradamus not only predicted the existence of the pandemic, but also accurately foresaw the time frame of its occurrence. However, despite compelling explanations regarding Nostradamus's prophecies, they still face criticism. In contrast to believers in the prophet's miraculous abilities, many argue that his utterances, though seemingly profound, are merely the result of clever wording. According to analysts, many of Nostradamus's prophecies include terms from 16th century French that most modern translators struggle to understand. These terms can be interpreted in various ways and easily linked to real-world events. Critics often point out the accuracy of Nostradamus's predictions as simply the result of coincidence and creative interpretation. It's important to remember that Nostradamus's work comprises approximately 1,000 quatrains, most of which are described in vague and enigmatic terms. Over the centuries, it's not surprising that some events would coincide with certain predictions. In fact, Nostradamus may have intentionally expressed his prophecies with this ambiguity. His verses often address death, war, or natural disasters, which are events likely to occur throughout history. This parallels the modern horoscope style, often used to predict common occurrences such as workplace conflicts, relationship happiness, or significant life changes. Recalling the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States, conspiracy theories about Nostradamus suddenly surged on the internet, reminiscent of the aftermath of 9/11 when people became obsessed with the prophet's predictions due to desperation during a crisis. Perhaps it's the idea that humans can foresee even the smallest details of the future that gives us some hope that we can control our own destiny. And perhaps this is also what has kept Nostradamus's reputation intact for over 500 years. Whether his prophecies are true or false, they touch upon one of humanity's most enduring desires, the ability to peer beyond the veil of the future.